here, and I have a question for you, actually. Um, so the principal is silly but fun, and the substitute is over the top silly. And 187 is like a wide divergence from the tenor of the previous two films. I'm curious as to why, when you put this together as the fun ones, you went with the very depressing 187.
Because it's still very surrealist, just like the other two, in comparison to
Mm-hmm.
what would really go on, in a school district, where it starts with elements of realism. Like, you have a
Mm-hmm.
teacher who's a screw up getting assigned to a bad school. You have, a gang overrunning a school and making threats to the administration in a very gang affiliated city that's, in that area. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not overtly unrealistic, right?
Right.
187, you have a teacher who teaches in a very tough area and neighborhood and goes through some very horrific personal drama there,
Mm-hmm.
and as a result transfers all the way across the country to a different area.
Yeah, like I said, this is a great meditation on like PTSD. It's an editorial comment on the kind of thing I was talking about before, how violence in schools drives good people out of it, or definitely gets them to change their ways. It's tragic. It's bleak. This isn't 187 is in no way a fun movie, and I like I said it for me, and we'll talk about it at length in just a moment. But I was there a third option that stayed more in the ballpark of what we were just discussing?
Well, here's how I looked at this chain of
Okay.
events, right? I looked at it as the principal is the NWA/WCW, the substitute is the WWF,
Hmm.
and 187 is the ECW of this grouping. They're
Okay.
all the same, but they all have their differences too in what they do and how they choose to execute it.
And both, and as you're not wrong, 187 also involved the stabbing.
And New Jack wasn't even in this one.
No, no, he was not. All right, so let's talk about 187 on an undercover cop. This actually has the most insightful in Wikipedia page of all three of these. So it's an actual real movie. Um, 187 is a 1997 American crime drama thriller film directed by Kevin Reynolds. If you don't know who Kevin Reynolds is, well, you should. Kevin Reynolds was the director of such great. Oh my God, he wrote Red Dawn, which is a movie we're gonna eventually have to talk about.
Ugh.
Fucking fantastic. He wrote and directed Fandango, not that Fandango. He was the director for Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which
Mm.
I'm sure everyone knows by now. He's the director for the masterpiece that is Waterworld. Mm-hmm.
In fairness, he disagreed with a lot of what went on with that movie. So
The Count of the 2002 Count of Monte Cristo, and the last movie he wrote and directed, as a matter of fact, was Risen, starring Joseph Fiennes, whatever.
fine.
Um,
Yeah, that was good
he
too.
In 2012 he worked on The Hatfields and the McCoys, which is a three-part television miniseries. So that's Kevin Reynolds. Certainly, he made his mark in Hollywood. It's the first. Now, it's funny that we ended up doing it this way, because Jason and I did an actor focus on Samuel L. Jackson, and I was specifically trying to find stuff that he was the top billed lead in, and I did not go with 187. This is actually the first top billed starring role for Samuel L. Jackson, so a little bit of film history there. And he plays Los Angeles teacher caught with gang trouble in an urban high school. It also stars John Hurd, Kelly Rowan, Clifton Collins Jr. in supporting roles. The name comes from the California Penal Code Section 187, which defines murder. Also, it's in every rap song you've ever heard. The original screenplay was written in 1995 by Scott Yeagman, a Los Angeles area high school substitute teacher for 7 years. Poor bastard. He wrote the screenplay after an incident when a violent transfer student had threatened to kill him and his family. Yeagman reported the threat to authorities, and the student was arrested. About a week later, he was called by the district attorney to testify against the student in a court of law, where the student was being prosecuted for stabbing a teacher's aide a year before. This annoyed Yeagman, who had not been told about it beforehand, and led to him writing the screenplay. He claimed that 90% of the film's material is based on incidents that happened to him and other teachers in real life. This bombed hard. It was made on a budget. See, if I'm a studio executive and you bring me two scripts, you bring me The Substitute and 187, I'm making The fucking Substitute. But I digress. It was made on a budget of 20 million. It made 5.7 million. It's got a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, so a bomb across the board. Your thoughts on your further thoughts on 187 when you saw it? Because I had never seen it before. You suggested we review it.
See, I'm surprised by that because this does seem like a type of movie you definitely would have been into or watched at a certain point in time.
Listen, I got my bona fides. I've seen New Jack City because we got some New Jack criminals. What we need is some New Jack cops. I've seen Colors. I've seen Clockers. I've seen Juice. I've reviewed Juice.
Well,
Boys in
no,
the
that's
Hood.
the thing. Like between
You
the genre it's in, and who's starring in it, because you're a big Sam Jackson guy.
right?
Like, I was so taken by surprise that you told me like, hey, I'd never seen it before this, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
really?
no clue. I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I guess this one just got past me.
So we can delve into the plot a little bit here. Like you mentioned, Samuel L. Jackson's teacher Trevor is a teacher in Brooklyn, in a
Mm-hmm.
horrible neighborhood. Shock, right?
Mm-hmm.
This transfer student shanks him multiple times in a hallway.
Hang on, student played by Method Man.
Method Man.
Because who hasn't been prison shanked by Method Man at this point?
I mean, he does this in Copland the same year. So
There you go. And I saw that, and I saw Copland too. So don't
yeah,
tell me what movies I haven't seen.
Wu-Tang and never mind. Anyway, Wu-Tang is forever.
That's right.
But yeah, so based on this happening, he moves across the country with his trauma and ends up substituting in a new school in the San Fernando Valley and makes friends with this other teacher, but then is informed that he's going to be inheriting all the shithead students and running that program where I think the KOD was in the substitute. This is KOS, right?
Yeah.
Capping off suckers.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. They're the main school, and they
Not to
have
be confused with DMS, which is dropping many suckers.
yeah. So they've got their leader Benny, and immediately like Trevor, you ain't shit, and there ain't gonna be no
Mm-hmm.
respect. And then Benny disappears after murdering someone, so now Cesar takes over, who's a student of Sam's, and tensions get crazy, like and surreal. Like we talked about how in the substitute he robs the drug dealers and then buys supplies for the school.
Mm-hmm.
In the principal, how he immediately is present with ever without a gun, yet winning all these skirmishes and what have you.
Right.
In 187, we see instances of Cesar being killed. We don't know who killed him, but the assumption is that it's Trevor.
Mm-hmm.
His finger is cut off writing with the writing "Are you done" on it, which is something much like the principal had "No more."
Right.
Sam Jackson's Trevor had "Are you done?"
To contextualize that, he had been Trevor is getting pushed and bullied by Cesar and his goons, and he is starting to lose his patience and fight back. So at one point, he confronts him in a courtyard, and he notices that he has a pot ring on his finger. He's like, "Take the ring off," and the kid's like, "No, and you can't make me, nanny foo foo." So then he drugs him and cuts his finger off, and then nails him. And because the kid had done the "Are you done?" line, it's just like Draft Day. Where at the beginning it starts off with Kevin Costner being called a pancake eating motherfucker, and then at the end he calls the general manager of the Seattle Seahawks a pancake eating motherfucker. See, Chekhov's gun, Pat. It all adds up
for a reason.
St. Gilda Radner once said. So yes, the "Are you done" thing is a callback.
Yeah. So there's a student that Trevor is tutoring, Rita, and unfortunately, what's brought to the attention is that because Trevor had tutored Rita at his house and invited her there,
Right.
he had violated guidelines, and he is summarily fired.
Yeah, it's the least believable thing in the movie.
Yeah.
What teacher does this? What teacher invites a kid to the house in whatever fucking year this was?
1997.
Yeah, no teacher by 1997. No teacher was inviting kids to their house.
No
way.
There was a little thing called Mary Kay Letourneau that we all got very familiar with on TV and TV movies and the like. And that although now teachers are getting busted all over the place, so who knows? Horrible that happens. Actually, let's just put that out there. But either way, there was a point in time where when this stuff was happening, it became a very much cognizant effort that, hey, we are not meeting anywhere outside of school unless it is very public, recognizable area like a library or where there are multiple people around who can validate the circumstances and what have you. so there was no impropriety or
Or
whatever
just
going
to be
on.
clear, because like, oh, you're two old, cisgendered white guys making too big a deal out of this. What about the innocence of? Okay, in that scene, she takes her clothing off as a way to thank him for tutoring her, and Samuel L. Jackson has to do the sound from TikTok. Where your clothes at? Hey man, this look pretty good. Where your clothes at? He
Yeah.
literally has to. It's a great directed and blocked scene because the camera's not on her. The camera is shot from the angle is shot from above. She walks off camera, and she's taking her clothing off, and you just kind of zoom in on Samuel Jackson, who's getting drinks, not like liquor. He's getting like
No.
soda,
Yeah.
and the camera then pulls back as it follows him walking towards the couch, and he's not looking up. He's focusing on the tray, and he looks up and he goes, and you just see his like jaw drop into his underpants, and he's just like, "Put your clothes back on."
Yeah. So again, it is a very serious thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not a thing to take lightly.
No.
But again, when that happens, he's fired by the administration for that.
Right.
So yeah, what finally happens is they find the gang leader Benny's body, and Cesar and the gang Caesar's now running the gang officially since Benny's dead. They basically get him at his home, make him confess to killing Benny, and that he cut off Caesar's finger. So then they make him start playing Russian roulette. And what happens is Trevor starts going into this big, like not monologue so much, but he goes into this big thing after every round, talking to Caesar about the life he's chosen to live and where it's going to end up and where did he think
Mm-hmm.
he's going to go, and basically pointing out stuff that in most contexts, I'm sure Caesar's heard this from somebody at some point, whether it be somebody in school, one of somebody
Mm-hmm.
in his family, whatever. It's a little different when you've put a guy in a situation where he could die with any pull of a trigger, and he's still taking the
Mm-hmm.
time to do this and say this to you. That's a guy who believes what he's talking about, because he, at this point in time, any clip he can go, but the point he wants to make is that you're wasting your life. Even if I lose mine, I still want to save yours.
The line you're building up to is something along the lines of, machismo isn't going to do you any good, and Caesar's return, his counter to that is, it's all I've got. If you've ever had any dealings with the Hispanic male culture, this
Some of
movie
my best
actually
friends.
touches on that. You know, the the almost infantilization of men while also elevating them to this position of power, not necessarily duly earned. And then you add on this layer of machismo to where it's a lot of, not pomp and circumstance per se, but there's a lot of projection and bellicose behavior on the part of these Hispanic men, many of which are projecting and how are deeply insecure and frustrated and traumatized and everything else. But this culture exists on this fantasy of what is the ideal Hispanic male, many of which they can't live up to. So when he, so and because Samuel Jackson is trying to make Caesar vulnerable and accept being educated, accept another man stepping into his life and being a mentor to him, and Caesar won't do it. Samuel Jackson is overly frustrated. No, Samuel Jackson's already dealing with his own trauma from having
Yeah.
been stabbed. But the stabbing is symbolic of being betrayed. Here I am, this teacher, and I am trying to give you knowledge and mentorship, and you betray me by physically hurting me. And so here he is again, he's building himself back up and he's trying, and he's so utterly frustrated by Cesar because, he's trying to give him all of these things, and Cesar rejects it out of hand. And he rejects it out of hand because of machismo. So when it comes to a head in the Russian roulette scene, and he's telling him, "You have to let go of machismo. This is doing you no good. You've got to get out of your own way." And in this, like, in the most vulnerable, most honest moment of this entire movie, Cesar says, "It's all I have."
Which he really, when he says that, he believes it,
Yeah,
because he's never been exposed to anything outside of that or led to believe that there is anything outside of that.
right.
and that's very much like you pointed to a cultural thing. Um, I know a lot of a good amount of my friends are all Mexican in heritage,
Hmm.
and they very much still are a man first macho culture, and it is what it is, and they have their own beliefs about manhood and machismo, like he says,
Right.
and it's still a very strong part of their culture. And so, again, you're in the San Fernando Valley. There's a lot of Mexican Americans, Chicanos who live there and are primarily the population in a lot of areas there. So it makes sense that that would be the prevalent culture of what he's dealing with. And when he's trying to get that point across again, this is a kid who has had no one probably do this for him in that
Right.
sense where he's always probably led to believe that somebody has an ulterior motive or something. There's no ulterior motive for Sam Jackson to be doing this with him at this moment.
Right.
There's really not, because Sam's still pulling the trigger, doing it, pulling the trigger, knowing full well there's any number of odds that he's going to get shot at any point in time. But his last plea is still to get to this kid, like you said, get out of your own way.
Yeah. It's like I said, the tenor of the movies is so sharply different from the substitute and the principal to the fact that we were having a lot of fun with this conversation, and now it's pretty serious. Like our tenor has changed to match the tenor of the film. It's a deeply depressing, tragic story. It ends with Sam Jackson killing himself through Russian roulette, and then Cesar, who is so damaged. You know, it's easy to write him off as the villain of the movie, but I'm actually sympathetic towards him. There's so many ridiculous expectations placed on him, and he is so damaged, and he is dealing with all kinds of pressure that he can't even let a dead guy have the last word
Nope. And again, where does machismo lead him?
to blowing his head off.
Because as soon as Jackson takes the extra turn and shoots himself in the head, Cesar decides I still have to be honorable and take my turn. And this misconception of what he has in his head is of what's honorable or what's
Right. It's I think if you were to try to encapsulate the frustration adult mentors have with children in crisis is their inability to take the opportunities being afforded them. And there are a lot. There are services and opportunities and institutions set up to give kids in the worst circumstances opportunities to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. The old conservative philosophy and the utter frustration and disappointment there is when kids when we're practically begging kids to rise to the challenge and they refuse. It's not even that they can't; they're refusing. They are
they're refusing it outright.
right,
One, and again, in some instances, yeah, it's due to pride, which is more the case in Cesar than it
right,
is in anybody else. But in a lot of those instances, it's just an unwillingness to trust because of the damage done.
right. That's the brilliance of that scene because he takes the extra shot. He takes his shot thereby giving him an opportunity. This is a second chance. This is a ninth live. You know uh, that you're being given, and he rejects it.
Yeah,
He's
he
so
gave him
bad.
he gave him the win
Right,
if he wanted it, where he doesn't have to do this. Okay, I've proven my point. But this kid is so far gone because of these things, because of the damage done to him via his cultural upbringing, being mixed with the gang culture and their agenda of what machismo is, and all of these things just
hmm
working against this kid. That he finally, okay, I can claim the win, and nobody's going to question it at that point. But in
right,
his own mind, he can't live with the fact that this guy got this over on him, so he has to take his shot, and it ends his
right.
life.
I would rather lose than let you win, which is a weird take, but that's where he is. And the thing of it is there are a lot more Caesars in this world than not, and it's really frustrating for people who go into the helping professions. Facts can confirm. So, and I think it also speaks to like personality disorder, antisocial, or narcissistic behavior, where you'll sacrifice a win, moving ahead, a better life, just to fuck the other person because that's more important to you.
It's the people who are okay with being right when the outcome sucks,
Yeah,
then are okay with being happy with the outcome even though they were wrong about it.